is 3 different levels of countries, all right? Or let's say call it cultures. There's a survival culture, there is a respect culture, and there is a power culture. Survival culture is a culture where people are just literally trying to survive. They're doing whatever they have to do to make ends meet. Maybe, it's very common for a person to be getting up at 5 a.m. to load a food cart and sell fruits on the side of the street. Or somebody to getting up at 5 a.m. to push another cart to collect the garbage for recycling. This actually happens. I see a lot of places. I've been in countries, I see people eating up the garbage, like eating the garbage out of the garbage. Not just like one person, but like a swarm of people eating the garbage out of the garbage at 6 o'clock in the evening. Like that was the first time in my life I've seen it. I won't say where, but it blew my mind. Okay, it blew my mind. And I've never seen it before. I've seen people like pick stuff out the garbage to find the good stuff, or like find some like thing in a package. I've never seen people just eat the sludge out of the garbage. It was wild, blew my mind. And survival culture is kind of just like doing what you got to do to survive, right? Then you have respect cultures. And these cultures are typically like a culture where there's a grandma that lives in the house. Nana lives in the house for a very long time. You don't put your elders in a nursing home. You keep your elders living in the family unit very close together. It's very traditional. Kind of like you see this a lot in like Asian cultures and Australian, Italian. I don't know if it's Italians still do this, but it was like this growing up, many generations in the same house. There's a Sunday dinner that's going on. You respect your elders. You don't raise your voice to your elders. That would be unheard of. Like, you don't, like, a lot of the time also, if you do something bad in the neighborhood, they would come and maybe tell your parents about it because it's like the neighborhood raises the child, all that kind of stuff. It's just really just all about respect for everybody. And you might see this politically. There's also cultures that are respect cultures where the police don't even have guns. I've been to, for example, Barbados. I don't know if it's still like this, but in Barbados, they don't have guns. They have like batons. And like if the police tells you to do something, like people just kind of respect the police. They don't cause a big fight or an issue where they have to like get physically involved. They'll just like get off the stage, like stop the ruckus, and let's like kind of go on. I think it's like that in Amsterdam too, which is a Dutch culture. It's like in Amsterdam, all the drugs are legal, but it's like Dutch people don't go crazy on drugs. Typically, like by the time they've like hit 16, 17, they're like, oh yeah, weed, oh yeah, this drug, whatever. Like they're kind of just like over it. They're kind of just like cool with it, So I would consider maybe the Dutch culture a long time ago, historically with their warships and everything and their colonies, was a power culture. Then they shifted into a respect culture in some way. And then last but not least, we'll talk about power cultures. So this is like a lot of the West, like I said, Amsterdam or the British Empire. This is like Australia, Canada, USA. A lot of these places are places where it's all about power. It's about get to the top, like the idea of like Wall Street stockbroker, get to the top. We worship our billionaires. Like that's our culture. I am the best. Everybody's the best in this world. Why are you the best? Because I'm American. America. Why? Because America.
Stop it. Get some help.
Why? The American dream. What does that mean? America, right? It's like ingrained in the people that live there from like the time they were really young to all the way they're older. And they're just like super serious about it. And they're like, that's the way they believe they are. Like, this won't happen to us. We're the best. Nobody's going to go to war with us. We got the nukes. Typically, if you're living in a country where a mindset is we got the nukes or we got the army, it's like, guess what? You live in a power culture, okay? So why am I telling you all this socially? Well, let's bring it all together. The survival culture, the respect culture, the power culture. This is all important because when you're having relationships with people that are not from the same culture as you, it can become very challenging. I mean, the country, I mean, like the level of the culture. So in my experience, if you try to take somebody from one level and move them up, it's possible. So you can interact with somebody or date somebody that's from a respect culture and move them up to a power culture. You can take somebody that's in a respect culture and bring them down to a survival culture. It'll work. You can take somebody that lives in a survival culture, somewhere like maybe in South America and bring them to a respect culture somewhere in Asia or Italy. It would work. You can take somebody that's in a power culture and live with them, interact with them in a respect culture. It would work. The problem happens when you try to jump two cultures. That is like very, very big problems. And you would think it makes sense, but it doesn't. So I'll tell you a story, then I'll explain why you can't do it and how the West is messing everything up. So a long time ago, I met somebody. This was in Africa, and part of my family's from Africa. I met somebody in Africa, and I was like, this is great. We're going to have a great time. This person spoke French. It was part of like what they spoke. And I was like, we're going to go to Europe. We're going to have a great time in Europe, okay? So I said, here's some money. Here's $500. We are going to get you the ticket. We're going to get you the visa because we need a visa to go there I think it was France. You need a visa, you have some family there, you're gonna go there, it'll be great. I called him back 2 days later and I'm like, yes, I have spoken with my father and I have given my father all of the money. And he says, I'm going to go to school in France as a student. And I'm like, you can't just do that. You can't just like say you're going to go as a student. It doesn't work like that. You didn't even apply to a school. You didn't apply to one school at all. How are you going to go somewhere as a student? You're not approved, you haven't applied. It's not going to work. It's not how international travel works. I'm the international travel expert. They were like, how dare you go against my father? You do not respect my father. He is the head of the household and he makes decisions. And I was like, I'm sorry, your father doesn't know what he's talking about.
Nice.
Click. Like I hung up on, right? And then of course it never worked out. The money went down the drain, was wasted on the visa the person never got. Ticket could not be boarded with, didn't get a refund of the ticket, was a waste of money, the whole thing. Later on, like I think literally like a few months later, like 4 months later, I got a phone call. I'm so sorry about what I said. I'm so sorry about what happened. You were right all along. It's like, yes, I know I was right, but the person couldn't understand. What was the problem here? We went from like a survival culture up to like my power culture mindset, and it didn't relate, right? We couldn't communicate. Another one was I brought somebody to the Great Wall of China with me a long time ago, and this person was from a kind of like survival culture as well, or at least their background was. I brought them to the Great Wall of China, which is like a great experience culturally, and I thought it was amazing. Did all these things they appreciated it, but they couldn't show it. You know, for them it was like, I'm gonna get souvenirs from like my aunt and my uncle and my cousins, but all these souvenirs for their family didn't like appreciate or say thank you to me one time on the trip, right? So this is the way it is. It's like when you're doing these culture jumps, it becomes very, very challenging for people to relate to it. Of course, you can have great experiences with them, but they can't really understand where you're coming from because they're stuck in their mentality, right? Like, for example, I have somebody that I know really close to me. Whenever they come and they eat, they kind of like put their fist around their food, almost like they're guarding it, and they're looking around like very savage to make sure nobody comes and eats their food. I'm like, what's going on? It's like they just grew up in a different mentality, different mindset, right? It's so simple, something like that, like eating, but really it's reflected in a lot of different ways. Interaction with men and women, finances are going to be a problem, personal space and boundaries are going to be a problem, communication, respect, like it just goes on and on and on. And it's so deeply seated into the way the person thinks that you cannot unwire it, even if you wanted to or tried or they agreed to.